Hello and welcome to Giving Ventures, a podcast to help you grow your giving and change the world for the better. Each episode, we share innovative charitable efforts leveraging private philanthropy to solve public problems. I'm your host, Peter Lipset, Vice President at DonorsTrust. This show is a product of DonorsTrust, the oldest and largest donor-advised fund focused on helping conservative and libertarian donors of all capacities simplify, protect, and grow their giving. My colleagues and I talk with a lot of groups doing great work. This show lets us share a bit of what we learned with you, so you can discover new projects for your own philanthropy.
This is a special time of year, and so we have a special episode for you. At DonorsTrust, it is our busiest season. There are plenty of events, plus we have new donors opening donor-advised funds, as well as existing clients requesting grants at an alarming pace. You will hear throughout this episode that I sound a little off, and I apologize for that. That is mostly thanks to a whirlwind of events over the last 2 weeks, those hosted by Atlas Network, American Enterprise Institute, Policy Circle, Jack Miller Center, Foundation for Research on Equal Opportunity, and my colleagues have been attending other events, including PragerU, Heritage Foundation, America's Future, and even the National Association of Estate Planners and Councils. We are thankful that there are so many groups that work to make this nation a better, stronger, freer, more prosperous place. And as we approach Thanksgiving, I thought it might be a nice time to create a giving cornucopia for you. I've invited on several of my DonorsTrust colleagues to share organizations they are thankful for, whether because of personal impact or from just being glad the group exists. It's a diverse collection and a reminder both of the broad power of private philanthropy and how each donor is very different. So enjoy these 5 glimpses into a variety of charities, and you will definitely want to listen to the end to hear the powerful personal story shared by my colleague and friend Greg Conco. All right, let's go. First guest today is one of our newest colleagues at DonorsTrust, Lucas Dwelly. Lucas joined us from many years of running his own fundraising and nonprofit consulting firm and is one of our philanthropic advisors working specifically with the professional advisors out there, the CPAs and planned giving attorneys and wealth advisors, etc., who are advising so many other people on how to do the best with their wealth. And so Lucas is getting to know them so that they can recommend folks to us and hopefully continue to grow the family of Liberty. Lucas, we're glad to have you here, glad to have you as part of DonorsTrust. What's the group you're thankful for?
Good afternoon. I am thankful for the National Review Institute. Peter, I just completed the Burke to Buckley Fellowship Program at Chicago. And as somebody who grew up admiring William F. Buckley, watching old Fire and Line videos and reading National Review for, maybe a decade and a half now, to be a fellow in the program has just been really significant for me in my learning, reinforcing my core values, and also learning other perspectives from individuals that are in the movement.
So I want you to tell us a little more about the program, but tell us just, in a couple sentences about National Review Institute for those listening who may not be familiar with it. I imagine many are.
The National Review Institute started back in 1991 as a charitable arm of the National Review magazine. The mission is to preserve and promote Bill Buckley's legacy and advance the principles of free society through educational programs and outreach. We have been together for the last 8 weeks. The first was done via Zoom, and then we all started meeting in Chicago. A group of individuals, no one knew each other, and we all started learning from one another, their perspectives. So when we think about what the Institute's doing, it's really bringing together a broad range of ideas, of viewpoints, hashing them out to understand how we can move forward together as not only as a society, but as a movement, and also learn from one another. And I think it's an interesting time right now with all the discourse that you can bring a group of people that come from different environmental backgrounds, which I believe that the National Review Institute was looking to do when they founded, and then to really talk about current topics, but also to go back and look at the legacy of Burke and Buckley, apply their readings, their thought process to current issues and problems.
And what does that let you do? I mean, coming out of the program, what do you feel you're positioned to do thanks to what the National Review Institute has built with this program?
On a personal level, to hear what other people are thinking, Peter, and then to go back and challenge some of those ideas after the class when we'd sit and we would retire to someplace and talk about things. And not everybody stayed, but those who did, it became really the after discussion of the program was really the most beneficial piece of it, especially coming off elections that we had last week. A lot of people were passionate about certain candidates, what happened. And then to think to ourselves, if Bill Buckley was alive, what would he think during this time period? How would he address some of the issues that we're dealing from a movement to a party to just the overall country's direction? For me, it created the vehicle to really think about where I want to not only take myself, but to lead my children, how I want to give back to my community. So overall, I think that it's a very unique program in the sense that, not to be redundant here, but you really are bringing together a group of people with different backgrounds. There's attorneys, there's a PhD, an individual who's a PhD who has 3 kids, and that's her pride and joy. That's what she does every day. And then this was an outlet for her. You have me that was flying in for this specifically because it would help me understand better how the legacy of the movement and to apply it to what we do now at Donors Trust.
Now, they do this program a few times a year, if I'm not mistaken. So folks who might be interested in it from a participatory standpoint haven't missed out. It's something they repeat. Is that right?
Yes, right now they have a class going in Dallas. They have one, I believe, in Philadelphia, Miami. So it'd be the 5 that they have right now. And they also have an online program where they're bringing in cohorts across the nation, which there is no geographic limit on the online piece.
So people might be interested in participating as you did as an actual fellow. Some people may just think, hey, this is a great idea, and I want to put some money behind it. What kind of donor do you think would really enjoy connecting with NRI, either because of the Buckley Fellows Program or just kind of in big picture?
When you look back and you think about the conservative movement over the last, say, 50 years, there's been Ronald Reagan, Morton Blackwell, Bill Buckley, Joseph Morris, other people that have been in the trenches ensuring that we push forward free society, free marketplace. And I think people that recognize that, that want to help create the next generation of thought leaders. This program, one of the things I really like about the program, Peter, is the fact that they were not looking for people that were coming from a policy standpoint or from Capitol Hill. They were looking for mid-level practitioners that wanted to go and learn and expand, and almost like a pay-it-forward type of project. You know, I go in and I complete the program, then I'm an evangelist outside talking to everybody about what I learned and what I went through. I think it becomes a force multiplier. So to that end, I think donors that are looking to invest in the conservative movement from a practical and academic standpoint would do really well to look at what the National Review Institute's doing. There's a great deal of pride by each individual that belongs to National Review magazine as a whole, but also the Institute, because truly the magazine will always remain. It is the Institute that really helps push Bill Buckley's ideas forward.
That's great. I like that idea of it being a force multiplier. I think that's a good summary. Well, Lucas, appreciate you sharing this little bit about your experience with National Review Institute.
Thank you, Peter.
Stephanie Lips is one of our philanthropic advisors at Donors Trust, and we are so happy to have her after many years of her working at the Atlas Network, who was featured in episode 1 of the Giving Ventures podcast. Stephanie, so glad you're here. What is a group that you are thankful for?
Oh, Human Rights Foundation. How could I not be thankful for a nonprofit that's focused on human rights around the world?
Yeah, tell us a little bit about what they do. What's their mission?
They are 100% focused on human rights around the world, but unlike someone like Amnesty International, they're not fearful that they can't call out a socialist dictator such as Chavez or Maduro.
They have really brought to light a lot of exceptional people. You want to highlight any of those?
They actually do a lot of amazing work with freedom champions around the world. Many of us know a chess champion who is also their chairman, Garry Kasparov. But a good personal friend of mine that made a name for herself at Human Rights Foundation is Yeonmi Park, the North Korean refugee. She escaped North Korea, and shortly after she came out of hiding in China, read many books on liberty. She's read Hayek, she's read Adam Smith, she's read Tom Palmer, David Bose's libertarianism, and she just inspires me. She gets up on that stage, and I think of the life I provide for my children and the life that Yan Mi grew up in. Lucky if she could have an apple every 5 years. And I think of how she's out there speaking out against Maduro, and she's speaking out against the Iranian regime, and speaking out against Cuba and the Taliban in Afghanistan. And what would we do without someone like that at the Human Rights Foundation to bring to light atrocities? They're human rights violations with the Uyghurs in China who are in modern day slavery, to people that don't even have food to eat or are put in concentration camps in North Korea. The Human Rights Foundation brings to light these atrocities throughout the world.
And it's probably no greater stage where they do this and where they highlight this than their big event every year that they do generally in Oslo. It's moved around a little bit, but marquee event in Oslo. You have attended that. What is that like?
It's inspiring and heartbreaking at the same time. It makes me appreciate all I have, because you see people that are coming from dictatorships there in Africa. You see people coming from Iran, Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia, China, North Korea, Venezuela, Cuba. When you go to the Oslo Freedom Forum, you can actually talk to someone like Simon Lee. Simon Lee is Jimmy Lai's most trusted advisor. Jimmy Lai founded Apple News in Hong Kong and is a very prominent man in the Umbrella Revolution. He stood out there. He spoke out to the Chinese. He is originally from China and came there because this is actually a great story, if you don't mind me just pulling aside a little bit. And you can hear this story at the Oslo Freedom Forum, and I think it's really important that I share it with you. Jimmy Lai, as a child, tasted chocolate when he was in China. He tasted chocolate, like a Hershey bar, stuff that our kids have all the time, Peter, you and me. And he tasted it, and he said, I've got to get to Hong Kong. I've got to get to freedom. Because if they have something that tastes this good, what else could they have? So this man went from a man that was lucky enough to have a chocolate bar to being one of the wealthiest men in all of Hong Kong. And he believed in democracy. He stood up to the Chinese. And then Simon Lee is at the Oslo Freedom Forum telling Jimmy Lai's story. That's what you get at the Oslo Freedom Forum.
Our friends at the Acton Institute, as a brief aside, also, as you know, Stephanie, have a great new documentary out telling Jimmy Lai's story, and he's in jail now, and what's going to happen to him, we don't know, but it is such a powerful story, as you illustrate. What kind of donor do you think would be attracted to the work that Human Rights Foundation does?
If you care about human rights and you don't want the government involved in human rights and them deciding what they think human rights is, then I think you'd be interested in the Human Rights Foundation, and maybe go to the Oslo Freedom Forum, or maybe go to one of their smaller events in New York if you don't want to, spend a week in Oslo, Norway.
That's great. Well, what they do is so important. It's a good reminder that the freedom we fight for every day, the way we fight for freedom every day, is very different than what people face all around the world, and how great it is that we have it here. So, Stephanie, thank you so much.
And happy Thanksgiving to all of those people around the world that cannot celebrate Thanksgiving.
There are only two people at DonorsTrust who have been here longer than I have, and one of them is Chris Renner, who's our controller and oversees our financial operations, make sure everything's above board and smooth, and glad to have him here. Chris, tell me about an organization you are thankful for.
Sure. Well, the organization I'm thankful for today is It's called Strong Towns. It is a small nonprofit. Chuck Marone is the guy who founded it and is pretty much the core of the organization. And they've got a lot of other folks who work full time or part time, depending on how much capacity they have at any given moment.
So Strong Towns is not an organization I know. So tell us about it. So what is the goal? What's it doing?
It's one of those things where it probably helps to describe the problem that they are addressing, and then what the organization does to address it will make more sense. The problem in the Strong Towns view is with the development pattern, the land development pattern in the United States in particular, I guess North America in generally, it is excessively car oriented, and there's too much separation of uses, and it is not done something that is financially productive. So if you look, for example, at the way development took place before the automobile was invented, development was very compact. Everything was, people could walk within a town, any urban area that existed. If you, let's say, pre 1920 or pre 1900, is built in a compact pattern where businesses, residences, and anything else that is urban, as opposed to you obviously had farmhouses and things like that were existed separately at the time. But anything in an urban area, it's a very compact pattern. All the space is used to the maximum extent possible, and that's something that's really financially productive, because you do have urban areas. There are a lot of amenities, some of which require a lot of infrastructure, and you really need to have productive use of the land in order to support all of that. What Strong Towns is concerned about is the post World War II development pattern, where the development, you still have almost as much intensity in terms of infrastructure and amenities, and you have much less intense use of the land that is it's meant to support all of that. So that's the big issue that they focus on, and it's something that until I started reading their work, I thought that urbanism and concern about development and stuff like that was something that goofy hippies cared about, and environmentalists and that sort of crowd, and I sure wasn't gonna had more practical concerns than that. But the way they focus on the financial side of things too, it really made an impression on me, and it's stuck with me. I think I've been a regular donor to them for about 6 years. I send them a little bit of money every month. I've been to a couple other events. I think they have a national conference next year, which is going to be their first, and I'm not sure whether I'll make it to that or not.
Yeah, these challenges are a lot more complex than they seem at first blush, right? And what is their solution? What is it that, if they are successful, that they will do?
Just move back to a more intense land use. If you look at and build on the good places that you have. So, for example, right here in Old Town Alexandria, where our office is an example where that is the traditional development pattern. The city has done very well in terms of using the grid, the row houses, the way things were built historically, and putting that to the most valuable use today. So it's a major tourist destination, and it's also an extremely fashionable place to live into, and that really is the, if you look at Alexandria City's finances, that's really what keeps it in good shape. And to a lesser extent, you see that in Fairfax, in the city of Fairfax where we live, they haven't done quite as much as Alexandria has, but there's very much a core old town, and there's a lot that can be done with that in order to make it a really great place that builds a lot of wealth for the people who live there.
So you think the type of donor that would be attracted to something like this is somebody who interested in urbanism and design, and maybe even into the environmental kind of free market environmentalism arena?
Yeah, definitely that, and or people who are fiscal conservatives might even find it interesting too. There is really one of the things that Strong Towns has done a bunch is to analyze land in terms of value per acre, and you can go do this comparison in any city you like. But invariably, you find that the historic downtowns have the most value per acre, and that's the best measure of what they're doing to support a town as a whole.
It's always good to hear about a new group. So, Chris, appreciate you telling us about Strong Towns. Thanks.
You're welcome. Glad. Thanks for the opportunity.
Carolyn Bolton has been with our team at DonorsTrust for almost a year and a half now, having come from the world of communications and marketing and even journalism, and now does communications and marketing for us, and we're thrilled to have her as part of our team. So, Carolyn, tell me about a project or group you are thankful for.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's great to be here. And yes, so I got my start in journalism. Love Young America's Foundation and their National Journalism Project. It's how I got my start in the liberty movement. So I love them. But the one that we're going to talk about today is American Compass, and I really love what they're doing and what they're all about.
Well, tell me about American Compass. What is it? It's a newer group.
Yeah, it's a newer group. They haven't been around that long. So they're my Amazon Smile beneficiary, which is a little ironic when it comes to American Compass because, they've been a little bit critical of Amazon because they argue that it's not a sufficient replacement for all the manufacturing jobs that America has lost over the years. But I just love how honest they are about not necessarily rethinking kind of a free market purism, but realizing, hey, we don't live in a free market and we haven't for a very long time, but they're real with people. They acknowledge, hey, like American families, individuals are struggling in some real ways. And what are some common sense things we can do, kind of market-based, that will help families, help. Marriage rates are plummeting, birth rates are plummeting. The Journal just had an expose on how it costs like $300,000 to raise a single kid. Higher ed aside, cost of higher education aside. It's really hard these days, and they acknowledge that, and they bring together policymakers or lawmakers, policy experts to talk about these things and come up with really great solutions.
Yeah, so it seems that the family side, maybe even if you will, the social issue side of what American Compass is doing is the thing that you think that they're really moving the needle on. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. They kind of acknowledge, hey, we can't drive up the cost of higher education. And then when, people graduate college, hand them a sluggish economy and offshore jobs and, struggle to meet the milestones that our parents and grandparents met when they were our, millennials age. So yeah, they're doing God's work. And yeah, Archbridge and Institute for Family Studies, I think, are all in the same vein, just in terms of trying to reverse just kind of warped, perverse incentive structures that we have in America.
Yeah, free op as well. A lot of these organizations are really realizing that one of the gaps in the conservative movement and the way that we've been talking about things is it's not that we are ignoring the lower 50% in terms of the wealth distribution, but we certainly don't talk about them necessarily as much, or in a way that recognizes that some of those situations may be different than some others. And I think you're right. American Compass and Free Op and Archbridge and some of these others are really shining a light on the diversity of folks out there and how sometimes the government intrusion in the marketplace really disrupts what we like to believe is a free market.
Yeah, totally.
So what kind of donor do you think would really be attracted to what American Compass is doing?
I think, people who grew up in a conservative or even libertarian home, maybe religious background, they definitely sympathize more with conservatism and conservative values, but they realize, hey, there's some things that need to change. Maybe they had children who suffered through the Great Recession and are getting pummeled again. Maybe they're just tired of corporate buybacks and want to reinvest in the workforce and reinvest in people. People in lower income brackets self-report being the loneliest of all Americans, and just helping that income level just to succeed and thrive in the world today.
Well, before we sign off, congratulations to you and a thank you to you, Carolyn. Those who listen to the podcast may hopefully sometimes go over to the website and read through the show notes or see those, and Carolyn is responsible for that and making sure that those thoughtfully get put up every time. So we really appreciate your role in making this podcast successful.
Awesome. It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much, Peter.
We're going to close out with Greg Conco. Greg Conco is Vice President for Programs at DonorsTrust and has done a terrific job of making sure that our grants processes go smoothly, and that the grants, the main job of DonorsTrust, which is helping to make sure donors can support the causes they care about, getting those grants out the door. That is what he oversees and the team that he works with. And we are thrilled to have Greg as part of the team. Greg has an interesting group to talk about. Greg, tell me the group that you are thankful for.
I am thankful for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. My wife and I give to the local chapter, the Make-A-Wish Mid-Atlantic, but we're both big fans of the entire organization.
And this is a very personal selection for you because of your son, Jack, who's a great guy in high school now, had a vicious struggle with cancer a few years ago. Tell us the impact of Make-A-Wish and how the impact it had for you, Jack, and for you and Carrie.
Thanks for the opportunity, Peter. And I think it's important to sort of start at the beginning because you've got to put this in context. It was back in the summer of 2018. Jack was 13 years old, and he was diagnosed with a type of cancer called lymphoblastic lymphoma. Carrie and we were devastated, right? It's not the kind of news any parent wants to get. Now, on the one hand, the doctors tried to reassure us that in kids Jack's age, this particular type of cancer, they can treat it very aggressively, so there's a very high cure rate. But what treat it very aggressively means is that that treatment can be just brutal. Jack was in and out of the hospital for nearly a year. There were weeks when he was getting IV infusions 4 days a week. He was achy and nauseated, and sometimes he was in very serious pain. And now he got very good care, and he is now in complete remission. He's been off treatment for 2 years, it'll be 2 years next month.
That's awesome.
But it was really, really tough on him. And one of the most important things that helped him get through the ordeal was the Make-A-Wish Foundation. You know, lots of people have heard of the Make-A-Wish Foundation. They arrange for kids with critical illnesses to get a wish, right? That some experience or something as a way of lifting their spirits, giving them something to look forward to as they go through a pretty rough patch. So in Jack's case, he loves cooking. And he's been a huge fan of the celebrity chef Alton Brown since he was very young. From the crib, his mother and I actually raised him on watching Alton Brown on television. And for the better part of a year, laying in the hospital bed, that's what Jack did to entertain himself. He watched the Food Network on television. So it was an obvious wish for him. And the Make-A-Wish Foundation arranged for Jack and of course Carrie and me too to go to Atlanta and have dinner with Alton Brown and his wife Elizabeth at one of their favorite restaurants. And the whole experience was just amazing. It was a really just, a dream come true for Jack. And here, this is the point that I really want to emphasize. Honestly, just as important as getting the wish itself was the months of sort of dreaming up the possibilities, right? Should he pick this or should he pick that? What about meeting players on the Pittsburgh Penguins, right? He's a big hockey fan. Or, his oncologist said, dream big. So there were ideas that we kicked around that were just completely implausible. My favorite was getting a couple of the Monty Python cast members together and reading through old skit scripts, right? But just the ability to imagine all of these wonderful experiences, even though, we knew a lot of them were totally unrealistic, but just being able to spend time dreaming about this was a huge boon for Jack's spirits, right? When he settled on dinner with Alton Brown, Make-A-Wish people told him they were going to be able to do it. Just the anticipation of it all made him, just giddy with excitement. And, you really can't imagine how important it is to have moments like that, right? When you're afraid your child is, right, literally deathly ill. You're afraid he's not going to make it. Hours every day he's crying because he's in pain. Something like that where you can spend time and dream about possibilities and exciting things, it's huge. And I am not aware of that. It's possible that other organizations exist, but I am not aware of another organization that does what the Make-A-Wish Foundation does. And that's why it's so important to Carrie and me.
It is a really unique niche in the marketplace. there's this misperception out there sometimes that at Donors Trust, we only give to policy groups. And I think you're bringing this organization up and your support of it, and the support of other people at Donors Trust, other Donors Trust clients' support of it and groups like it, is such a reminder that part of the reason we do support all that policy stuff is to create the freedom and the space for groups like this to exist and to make dreams come true, to help people without government, without the need for that kind of interference, but really to change lives in a positive way. You, in your seat with the grants, see a lot of these groups come through and probably have a better understanding than most of the importance of them.
Yeah, we make not quite half of our grants to traditional philanthropical organizations. These are churches and synagogues and schools and hospitals and food banks and all sorts of traditional organizations, most of which, as you say, right, they are doing wonderful things, not relying on taxpayer money. They are relying on voluntary contributions. And in fact, Make-A-Wish, almost all of their money goes into the programming and goes into the granting the wishes for kids. And at the chapter level, they are principally staffed by volunteers.
Oh, wow.
It makes me, I come out of the policy world, and I'm very happy that a majority of our grants go to conservative, libertarian, free market public policy organizations, right? Because that's been my bread and butter for 25 years. But I'm also very, very pleased to be able to give to organizations like this that do civil society work that is paid for by voluntary contributions.
Now, it's kind of goes without saying why somebody like you and Carrie might want to support Make-A-Wish. We hope there's not too many people listening who have had to deal with what you have had to deal with, what Jack has had to deal with. But what kind of donor do you think is out there who might enjoy supporting a group like Make-A-Wish?
Well, certainly I think anyone who is interested in children's health issues or health issues more broadly, right? If you're the kind of person who gives to medical research, Carrie and I, we give to cancer research organizations. We support the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, St. Jude's Children's Hospital. I think those organizations are indispensable. But given what the Make-A-Wish Foundation does and its special niche in taking care of kids and helping deal with their mental, emotional, spiritual well-being as well as their physical well-being, I think it's a wonderful grantee. I encourage all our friends to give to the Make-A-Wish Foundation. And if you're the kind of donor that likes to give to support improvements in health, especially children's healthcare issues, I would encourage you to make the Make-A-Wish Foundation a part of your giving portfolio.
Well, Greg, I appreciate you sharing the experience that you and Carrie went through, that Jack went through, the experience that you had with Make-A-Wish. I think it's great to hear, and it's encouraging to hear, and a nice way to end this show. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter.
Well, with that unique lineup of organizations, there is no way to characterize the theme of this episode other than gratitude. Gratitude for the way organizations serve to strengthen us, those we love, and our communities. Gratitude for groups speaking uncomfortable truths and allowing the voiceless to shout for freedom. Gratitude, above all, for the power of philanthropy. I know you are a giver. You wouldn't invest time to listen to this podcast among the millions available to you if you weren't. Are you giving with Donors Trust? If not, and want a way to streamline your giving in a smart, principled, private way, well, let's talk. There is still time to open a fund before the tax year ends, though, frankly, no time is the wrong time, and we're standing by. We will release this episode just days before Thanksgiving in 2022. It is that most unique and special of American holidays. I hope it is a time of gladness and gratitude for you and for those you love. I am grateful that you take time to listen to Giving Ventures, and for some, and hopefully more of you, to be part of the Donors Trust family. So enjoy your turkey, pass the green beans, and we'll talk more soon.